Welcome to twoquestions.tv. With me today is Tim Cole, and we're talking about career growth. Welcome to twoquestions.tv. I'm your host, Susan Baroncini-Moe. Joining me today is Tim Cole. He's the founder and CEO of the Compass Alliance. He's also the author of The Compass Solution, a guide to winning your career. He's also a veteran of the healthcare industry, and he's committed to helping others win the greatest financial investment of their lives. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Now, what is, this is not one of the two questions, but what is one of the greatest financial investments of our lives?
Well, you hit it. When I began to look, Susan, at the scope of what a career involves, you work 40 years.
Yeah.
You work 45.
At least.
Yeah. For most of us, it's going to be more than that. And I sat down one day and began to do the math on it and realized, my gosh, 100,000 hours, 100,000 hours. And one of the impetuses behind the book, honestly, was the fact that I've known so many people who invest that 100,000 hours more like a gamble in Las Vegas. Many times they don't win it, or maybe, going to buy a lottery ticket. And I felt the need, after having journeyed as I have through so many years in healthcare, to write a book that maybe would offer the help that I wish someone had given me when I was 21 years old.
Yeah, well, and it is a fantastic book. And it had me thinking about how we hear from time to time in the news that it really won't be that long before we're basically all free agents. So for a viewer who might be watching the show today, maybe somebody who's entering the workforce and thinking about career, the future, how does the Compass Solution apply there?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think the time is already here when we're free agents. We just don't recognize it, or maybe don't want to acknowledge it. But anyone in any profession, for the most part, really is a contracted agent. And so I think what I try to say to people is this: you've got to approach, and by the way, I've got background noise, I have to tell you. We've got our grandchild at our home. I have background noise at any point. I will apologize. But
don't apologize. That's a good sound. You can't apologize for that.
He's 2 months old tomorrow, so this is kind of an interesting time. But no, I think what I try to say to people is this. You've got to approach your job, whether it's your first job or your 10th job, is if it will come to an end in 6 months. And people hear that, especially in the corporate world, and they kind of cringe. But I try to challenge people to assume that the job, the average job right now is about 4 years. So you would assume in a lifetime, you'll probably work for something like 10 to 12 companies. My advice to everyone is to assume that you're a free agent. And I'll go back now to the genesis of your question. The markers that inform the compass in the Compass Solution are the 4 markers that I found over the course of 30 plus years that gave me guidance, they gave me a sense of purpose, and they gave me a sense of direction. And had I not found them, I would have fallen victim to the, 5 mergers and probably some 24 restructures that swept away thousands. So I managed to survive because I found markers, and that was probably the difference maker for me.
It's incredible. One of the things that my executive coaching clients come to me for is soft skills work. And there's a point at which, to continue moving up in your career, to become a leader, you do need those sort of emotional intelligence, communications types of soft skills. How do you recommend that people learn those skills? Because you talk about that in the book.
I talk a lot about it. And, I appreciate the term soft skills because I've heard that a lot. In my journey, I can tell you that leadership was probably the most important aspect of making it as far as I made it. And the reason was early on, I began to realize 90% of the people I interacted with, I call, for lack of a better term, transactional managers. And by that I meant you work with them, there's a compensation, there's a quid pro quo, and that's kind of the relationship. And so much, I think, of your interactions in the business world, at least, are transactional. Right. But early on, by about my 4th or 5th year, I began to meet 1 or 2 what I would call transformative leaders. And transformative leaders, and this is a simple definition, but I mention it in the book. Transactional managers, quid pro quo, you do your job, you get compensated for it, everything's fine. But transformative leaders are the people that influence in such a way that regardless of the pay, you have a tendency to want to follow them. You're influenced by them. And so what I try to say to people is, if you really want to stop and take a look at it, the Compass Solution really is, it's a book on leadership.
It is.
It is. It's a book on leading self. And as soon as people recognize, you know, I once said to someone, well, they said to me, well, I don't want to be a supervisor. I don't want to be a manager. So leadership doesn't apply. And how do you respond to that? Because you
yes, it does too.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. No. And so what I tried to say to people is, look, this is a book on leadership, but it's on leading self. And once you embrace that, I think the journey becomes infinitely easier.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, I really, really enjoyed this book, and I am excited that we get to share it with people today. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
I do feel like I could ask you a lot more questions, but everybody, viewers, you know I only get 2, so we'll just have to have Tim come back. But
Please.
Tim, will you come back? We'll talk more about this book.
I would love to come back.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so viewers, this is the book, The Compass Solution. We will have the link to this book on Amazon in the show notes, so you can get your copy and start learning how to be a leader of self. All right, viewers, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.